The gunshot echoes through the air as Al pulls on the trigger of his revolver, with the bullet connecting to the face of the chief, with the chief's head being knocked back hard enough to fling his glasses off his face. However, the chief remains standing and slowly brings his head back, terrifying Al to where he can barely keep the gun stable and can barely keep his hands from shaking as the chief spits out a large sum of blood with fragments of his teeth in it, with the bullet in the center of the now spit out blood on the ground. The chief looks at him with a smile, with the blood dripping out of his mouth. You did not just do that, says Al, trying to comprehend how someone could possibly catch a bullet with their teeth. And the chief only continues smiling.
I told you, Al! Fighting me was a foolish idea, though you actually have managed to piss me off,
responds the chief as he takes one step towards Al. Al's legs begin to shake with suddenly the appearance of the Guardian, the strange man appearing out of nowhere between Al and the chief, with the chief changing his demeanor, and his smile goes to an angry grin as his eyes glare at the Guardian. It has been a long time, my old friend, says the Guardian to the chief, with the chief's anger increasing as he tightens his knuckles.
Now is the time that you have finally gotten involved. Now is when you have finally deemed it necessary to get involved,
says the chief with anger spewing from his aura as the Guardian begins limping towards the chief, dragging his right leg behind him, with his face being saddened. I cannot say that I am sorry, and I know that what I have done is unforgivable, and the things I have done to you are unforgivable. However, I must try to amend my mistakes of the past, responds the Guardian, with the chief spitting blood at the feet of the Guardian as he glares back up at him.
Amend your mistakes? You honestly think that you can amend what you had done to me? You honestly think that you can amend the past that you live? There is nothing you can do to amend what you have done, what you had done to me,
says the chief, with the Guardian now ceasing to walk any closer, with his face getting even more saddened. Look, you must listen to me, Helsing.
Do not call me that name. I have stopped going by that name, and I will never go by that name again. You are not worthy to say the name Van Helsing, and I don't ever want to hear it again. Do you understand, Count? Do you hear my words, Dracula?
Responds the chief, with the Guardian just staring at him, looking down at the ground afterwards. Well, it would appear you and I are once again mortal enemies. If you will not hear my words, Helsing, then you will have to once again feel my wrath, and I am truly sorry, says the Guardian as he vanishes with Al, Alex, Jasmine, and Vince along with him, leaving the chief alone, standing in the cold as the chief falls to his knees.
Damn you! Damn you! Every time! Every time!
He says as he punches the ground, with the Guardian now returning to the white and golden palace with the others. All he can do is think to himself, I must prevent you, Van Helsing, from making the same mistake that I had made. History will not repeat itself, not as long as I am breathing. Hello, my random viewers, and welcome to Randomly Offensive. Today, we will be continuing the story of Genetic Blessings in Part 2, Chapter 5, and if you have missed the previous videos, they will be linked right here, right now, at the tippy top of this video right here, right now, and if you want to clickety on them, go for it. If not, I'm sure that I will manage to fill in the gaps for you as we go on with the story. So, with that being said, let's continue Genetic Blessings, Part 2, Chapter 5. The year is 1458, with a man by the name of Van Helsing preparing himself for another day of eradicating those who have chosen the path of Satan himself, as they walk amongst the earth as beasts, demons, disguised as humans, and most commonly known for these men is the name Vampire, with Van Helsing being a notorious vampire hunter, as he places two small round glasses upon his face while grabbing a briefcase that looks nothing more than a medical briefcase, though within it are multiple syringes used for eradicating these beings, along with a small condensable crossbow lined with multitudes of varieties of different arrows used for the same purposes, to eradicate those of the unholy persuasion. As he leaves his corridors, he walks the streets, listening to civilians talk and listening to multiple conversations throughout the city, waiting to hear anything that might give him a lead about something, anything that might be out of the ordinary and may be reason to speculate that a vampire is indeed lurking the area. For hours and hours, Helsing does this every morning, patiently waiting and listening. One of the conversations stands out from the others as Helsing listens to a group of people talk about a mad scientist a doctor by the name of Frankenstein who has been a menace to the people and is theorized to be the very cause of the beings they call vampires, and could very well be the reason that these vampires walk amongst them. And though Helsing has had the same theories and has had the same thoughts, he has never been able to put together enough evidence to allow the Queen and the royalty to give him the permission to investigate and confront Dr. Frankenstein, and so he has been forced to leave the subject alone. However, amongst further listening in the conversation, he hears the people talk about how Frankenstein has partnered with a man who goes by the name of Lamari, a incredibly terrifying crime lord who runs a large criminal organization. And if this doctor, if this Frankenstein is the cause of these vampires, and if he has sided with a criminal organization, and if he has sided with the crime lord Lamari, it could be tremendous and horrifying to see the outcome of such a partnership. So Helsing sits back, thinking and knowing that he must do something, but he will never be granted the permission from the Queen or royalty. But luckily for him, he has a friend who has climbed the political ranks and has become a count to the Queen, and could very well grant him permission to investigate the crime lord Lamari, and maybe, just maybe, finally put together enough evidence to investigate Dr. Frankenstein. And so Helsing returns home to his wife Claudia and his 2 children, as he sends a messenger to invite his dear friend, Count Dracula, over to dinner so that they can discuss the situation. And so Claudia cooks up a large, fine feast as Helsing waits for the arrival of Count Dracula. And in only a short few amount of hours, Dracula has shown up as he hugs Helsing. "Well, my dear friend," says Dracula, "how have you been?" "Oh, I've been just fine," responds Helsing. "However, there's a situation we must discuss, but not before the little ones go to bed, and Claudia has retired for the night. So, until then, allow us to enjoy a meal," responds Helsing, with Dracula agreeing full-heartedly and accepting the invitation to dinner. Helsing and Dracula converse and laugh over the supper that Claudia had cooked, and the time has come for the kids to go to bed, and Claudia then retires to her room with Dracula and Helsing sitting alone. "All right, my dear friend, what is it that you must discuss? What is so important that you felt it necessary to invite me and provide me with such a fabulous meal?" says Dracula, with Helsing putting his hands together and leaning towards Dracula. "Well, I've been listening. I've been listening the way I've always listened for years and years, and upon listening, I picked up some information about our dear Dr. Frankenstein," says Helsing, with Dracula leaning back, putting his fist on his cheek. "My dear friend, you're gonna have to let that go. You are going to have to let the deal, the case with Frankenstein go. I cannot grant you permission. Though I am a count, the Queen will never allow me to have you investigate Frankenstein. He is far too valuable to the royals, and he is far too valuable when it comes to any testings, and our medical advancements would cease if it weren't for that man. You cannot ask me again, says Dracula, with Helsing standing up, and nor do I want you to grant me permission for Frankenstein. I will collect the information and the evidence I need, and I will go straight to the Queen myself. However, says Helsing as he fixes his glasses on his face, there is someone I need your permission and maybe even your help with investigating. Frankenstein has teamed up with Lamari, the criminal, the crime lord, the man who is the cause of one of the biggest criminal organizations we've ever seen. He brings tyranny amongst the people, and I can't imagine the Queen being upset if you granted me permission to investigate, to possibly eradicate such a large group of criminals, says Helsing as he looks at Dracula at the corner of his eye. I suppose I can help you with that, responds Dracula as he removes the fist from his cheek and stands up as he walks towards Helsing. Do you know where I can even find him? Do you know where you can find Lamari? Just exactly how do you intend on investigating a man that has managed to go under the radar for so many years? Asks Dracula, with Helsing nodding his head. Yes, that is where I was hoping I could maybe receive your help, responds Helsing as he wags his finger and walks out of the kitchen with Dracula following him. I do believe that there is a bar that has many of the criminals involved with Lamari's organization, and within that bar it would be obvious to me that the owner of said bar, who allows these criminals in, has deep ties with Lamari. Very well, very possibly, he could know the location of Lamari. However, walking into a bar of criminals, you will not be able to defend yourself amongst that many men, most likely armed. Is that what I am hearing from you? Responds Dracula, with Helsing nodding his head. Yes, that is exactly what I am saying. I'm sure I can take out the owner, I can torture him, investigate him, and interrogate him, and get the information I need, but I'm gonna need help with those men, and you have never ceased to amaze me. You have never failed to impress me, nor surprise me with your unhuman strength and your unhuman skill. So, what do you say? Says Helsing as he reaches his hand out, and Dracula grabs it firmly. I say that you have my help. First thing tomorrow, we will go to the bar of which you speak, and I will gladly take out every single person in there while you interrogate the owner. If we can find Lamari, I'm sure the Queen would be pleased with eradicating him. And so the next morning, Count Dracula and Van Helsing walk the streets towards the bar that has ties with Lamari, and people stare in fear and amazement as they recognize Count Dracula, and of course they recognize the vampire hunter Van Helsing. And when these two men are together, nobody in their right mind would dare to even walk in their way, For when Dracula and Helsing have teamed up and become a duo, there is not a single being alive that will walk away from any negative encounter. As the two approach the bar, Dracula kicks the doors open with no discreet entrance as he walks confidently through the bar, with Helsing walking behind him with his suitcase, watching Dracula. Dracula has always impressed him with his brute strength, his skill. He has watched Dracula get them out of so many tough situations in the past, and if it wasn't for him, his name as Vampire Hunter would be nowhere near as notorious as it is now, and there's a very good chance that he would not be breathing long enough to have ever had 2 children, nor meet Claudia. And with that, the only thing that Helsing feels towards his friend, who is now the Count, is pride and a strong level of trust. With Helsing looking at Dracula, Dracula looks at the bar, who is dead silent as it's filled with criminals staring at them, threateningly getting ready to bash in their skulls, with Dracula smirking and looking at Helsing. Very well. You will go to the owner. I believe he's upstairs, most likely in the biggest room in the building. You do what you do best, Helsing, says Dracula, with Helsing looking at least 30 or 40 men within the bar. Well, are you sure you can take out all these men by yourself? I mean, I don't doubt you, but at the same time, I'm kinda doubting you, responds Helsing, with Dracula smirk becoming a smile. Oh yes, I believe I'll be just fine, says Dracula, with Helsing walking up the stairs, with a criminal attempting to stop him, but Dracula grabs him by the back of the neck and slams him down on the ground hard enough to where the man's neck snaps, with all the criminals pulling out all of their weapons, their swords and their crossbows, breaking legs off of chairs. As they engage with Dracula, Helsing enters the room of the man who owns the bar, and in the distance all you hear are multiple men screaming and fighting, with the screams of one man drowning out the rest. And only minutes have passed, with Helsing walking out of the room covered in blood. As he looks around the bar, the only man left standing is Dracula. Lamari is located in Vamore, says Helsing, as he wipes blood off of his white coat, with Dracula smiling. So he sang like a bird, did he? Responds Dracula, with Helsing walking down the stairs holding his briefcase. He did, and it would appear these men were no match for the great Count, responds Helsing, with Dracula too smirking. Well, very well. Let's go to the Vamore. There's one little issue with that building, however, says Dracula, with Helsing nodding his head. Yeah, trying to break into that place is not gonna be easy. Those doors weigh what, 700-800 pounds apiece? That is not my concern, responds Dracula. As they approach the Vamore, Dracula stands at the 2 large doors, weighing 800 pounds each, as he presses his hands on the doors. With a hand on each door, Helsing looks at Dracula. Now, you can't be serious, my friend. There is not a single man alive that can... However, Helsing is cut short as Dracula begins yelling and grunting, with his voice becoming a growl, as the doors slowly begin to open, and Dracula pushes the doors as they finally begin to swing with the momentum, and walks into the Vamor, with Lamari sitting at a table just down across the room, with multiple guards who are now trembling at the sight of Dracula's strength. The guards are not the only ones, however, with Helsing standing at the doorway, looking at his friend Count Dracula, wondering how was it possible for him to push those doors open? He has always shown great signs of strength, but today, taking out almost 40 men and pushing a total of 1,600 pounds with effort, but nowhere near the amount of effort it should have taken, doing that alone brings Helsing to a disturbing thought. Could this man be one of them? Could this man be a vampire? The thought alone sickens Helsing, though that Helsing does not want to believe his own thoughts. He can't help but wonder how a man could push the doors that would take at least a dozen men. How could a man defeat 30 or 40 men without a scratch? However, Helsing does not want to think about this, and this is not what Helsing has come to do. He has come to put an end to Lamari and possibly collect enough evidence to finally get rid of the Dr. Frankenstein, and so he begins walking to catch up with Dracula, who walks towards Lamari as Lamari is now standing up from his table. With the guard still trembling, Dracula walks directly to Lamari and looks at the plate of the meal that Lamari was just eating, with it having potatoes, a steak, and a side of vegetables. Dracula undoes his trousers as he begins urinating on the plate, with Lamari looking at him. What the hell what in God's name are you doing? Says Lamari as he looks at his guards. Stop him! Do something! Take him out! Says Lamari, with the guards not doing anything as Dracula continues urinating on the meal, with Helsing fixing his glasses. They just watched a man push open 1,600-pound doors. Do you honestly believe that they're gonna mess with a man capable of doing that? And just in case any of you guys are dumb enough to attempt to fight a man like that, he took out your guys' lovely bar. You know, the hangout that has 30 to 40 men? Yeah, all those men, they're down, and I didn't lift a finger. That was the man who is now urinating on your potatoes, responds Helsing, with the guards very well getting the point. As Dracula finishes, he puts his trousers back on as he points to the plate and looks at Lamari. Are you going to finish that? Says Dracula, with Lamari looking at it in disgust. Are you insane? Of course I'm not going to finish that, responds Lamari, with Dracula getting a smile on his face as he grabs the plate, Good, says Dracula as he smashes the plate across Lamari's face, shoving the potatoes that have absorbed his urine and the steak and vegetables that has too absorbed his urine across the face of Lamari as Dracula shoves the food into his face, with the plate now breaking as Lamari hits the ground. The guards can only look away in disgust as their boss becomes humiliated, with Dracula grabbing him by the throat and picking him back up, throwing him onto one of the chairs around the table, looking at Helsing. With Helsing knowing exactly what to do, he begins opening his briefcase and pulls out 2 large cutters that are used to cut the bolts off of gates, with Helsing turning his gaze back to Lamari. You are going to tell us everything we need to know about your partnership with Frankenstein, and you need to tell us everything about Frankenstein. And just in case you think we're not serious, says Dracula as Helsing then grabs one of the hands of Lamari and puts the cutters right around his index finger and slices his finger off, with Lamari screaming. Helsing then puts his hand over the mouth of Lamari. We will ask you questions, and every time you refuse to answer, we will cut off more fingers. And if we run out of fingers to cut off, we'll move on to your toes. And if your toes don't cut off, we will then be forced to cut off the last 2 things that hang off your body. Or last 3 things. Do testicles count as 1 thing or 2 things? Says Dracula to Helsing, with Helsing looking at him. They count as 1 thing. Testicles count as 1 thing, so we will cut off the only 2 things you will have left hanging from your body. And if somehow you have yet to speak to us, and by some miracle you are still alive, we will then move on to your nose, and then your ears, and then your tongue. Do you understand what I am telling you? You will die very slowly unless you answer every question we have for you, says Dracula, with Lamari nodding his head with Helsing's hand still over his mouth. Helsing lets go of Lamari's mouth as Dracula then walks away and leans on a wall, watching the guards. By the way, after Helsing is done interrogating your boss, the Vamore will be mine. This is my building, this is my temple, and this is my property from this point on. Do you understand? Says Dracula, with the guards nodding their heads. And so Helsing begins to interrogate Lamari. Lamari tells Helsing everything about Frankenstein's experiments and about how Frankenstein had discovered these floating orbs. And upon applying them to people, he has created a very special brand of beings who contain incredible powers. And if a being has more than 1 orb, they will self-destruct and they will die due to their body not being able to contain such power. Lamari continues, telling Helsing that Frankenstein had discovered that by drinking blood, by consuming souls of the innocent. These beings are capable of containing more than one genetic blessing. However, the longer they have multiple genetic blessings, the more their thirst for human blood, the more the thirst for human souls grow. And hence how the myth, the theory of the vampire, was caused by the genetic blessings due to the experiments of Dr. Frankenstein, with Helsing acknowledging the new information, now has the evidence he needs to confront Frankenstein, and is granted permission from the Queen herself to investigate. As he leaves Dracula, he goes on his journeys and his adventures that will solidify his myth and the legend of Van Helsing, as Dracula continues doing what he has done best, being a count and running the political ranks of royalty, though no one has been able to quite figure out what has been going on with the man, the Count Dracula, as he's been acting odd. 2 years have passed, and it is now 1460, with Helsing having many encounters with genetic blessings, the likes of the Invisible Man and Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, while finally being able to eradicate Dr. Frankenstein, and even was forced to face off with Frankenstein's monster. And within Frankenstein's monster was an orb that Helsing managed to contain in a jar. As he holds it close, he heads back to the Vamore, which is now owned by his old friend Dracula, and he has heard many tales of Dracula over the 2 years about his new nickname, the Impaler, and a man who is so awful and so evil that he has been cast away from the kingdom and is meant to be killed on sight if anyone ever sees the once Count Dracula. And as Helsing enters the large old gates that lead to the Vamore, he sees giant 12-foot spears, over hundreds of them, fill the courtyard of the Vamore, with bodies being impaled upon every single one of them, with some fresh and many rotting. As Helsing rides his horse down the cobble road, he looks at the surrounding bodies impaled in the spears. "My dear friend, what have you done? What has happened to you?" says Helsing as he finally approaches the Vamore doors, the 800-pound doors that weigh 1,600 pounds together. He remembers the day that Dracula pushed the doors open. As he gets off his horse, he knocks on the doors, with them swinging open almost instantly as Dracula pulls the doors with no effort at all. Helsing looks at the man, terrified, as his once olive skin has become pale, and he looks tired, withered, and exhausted. "Old friend, it is so nice to see you again," says Dracula, with Helsing looking at him. What has happened to you? Says Helsing, asking as a friend, but he knows what has happened to Dracula. He has become one of them. He had become one of them years ago, and Helsing begins feeling his stomach twist and turn, and knowing that he is going to have to eradicate this vampire who was once his dear friend. I can feel it, says Dracula, snapping Helsing out of his thoughts. I'm sorry? I can feel it. I can feel the orb. I can feel the genetic blessing. You have a very special one, don't you? Says Dracula, with Helsing nodding his head, pulling the orb out that is still in a jar. It is right here. It was inside of Frankenstein's monster. Indeed it was, says Dracula as he grabs the jar. Come with me, says Dracula as he walks through the Mamor. Helsing follows and walks down into a chamber that leads far, far underground. With Helsing following Dracula, he then sees a large empty room with many, many orbs floating on shelves, organized, clean. What are all of these? They're genetic blessings. I have been collecting them, says Dracula as he smiles, and I've obtained one that is literally all of them. One orb has granted me the power of all orbs, but unfortunately, my body does not possess the natural strength, and it was trying to kill me. But then I remembered what Lamore had to say about drinking the blood. Is that it? Interrupts Helsing. Drinking the blood of the innocents? Taking the souls of the innocent, feasting on the innocents. Why have you become obsessed with that power? Why are you? You know what I have to do if you are drinking the blood of others. If you're a vampire, Dracula, I can't allow you to live. You don't have a choice, Helsing. You don't stand a chance against me, but I do ask that before you do anything that you will regret, I have an offer. These genetic blessings are so powerful. The one that I hold is so powerful. The one I have within me is so powerful that I can become king. Not just king of the land we have, but king of the entire world. No, wait. You want to rule the entire world? That's insanity, Dracula. No, it is not insanity. You have been fighting for years to protect this world from the unnatural, from those who contain genetic blessings, all because you thought that they were of the unholy persuasion. You thought they were demons, but you were wrong. They hold the secret to ending humanity. You want to... Dracula, you sound like a madman. Why would you want to end humanity? Because they have been ending themselves for years. They enslave themselves. They kill themselves. They apply torture to the world. They kill for money. They kill for power. They cause turmoil with every war they strike, with every being they enslave. Humans do not deserve to live. However, if every man had a genetic blessing and I was the god of all genetic blessings, with this orb, I could create peace. I could be the world's savior. I could be salvation, says Dracula, with Helsing jaw-dropped and shocked at the words of his friend. So you're trying to do the right thing. You think humans are evil, so you want to eradicate humans entirely? Do you not realize what is in the front of your home? Do you not realize what the land you own is covered with? Corpses that are impaled. Corpses hanging 12 feet in the air for everyone to see. You call that reasonable? You call that humane? Those are men who had gotten in my way. Those are men that wanted to steal my orbs. Those are men that wanted to steal my genetic blessing, steal my power. And they wanted to eradicate me because they knew that I had the power to make this world a better place. And though everyone claims that that's what they want, everything they do proves otherwise. I can finally make this world heaven on earth. No, my friend, responds Helsing. No. I'm sorry, Dracula, but I cannot allow you to do that, he says as he pulls out his crossbow from his briefcase and points it at Dracula, pulling the trigger as fast as he can. However, the arrow just floats in the air, only inches away from the skull of Dracula. I don't think you get it. The God Orb has given me every single power. There are thousands of genetic blessings, and I have every single one in my body. A measly arrow, says Dracula as the arrow falls to the ground. A measly arrow will not take me out. I'm telling you this one last time, Helsing. Either call yourself a friend or leave, but you do not want to fight me, says Dracula as he stands right in front of Helsing, with Helsing no longer being able to recognize his friend. Very well. Very well, old friend. I will leave you now, says Helsing as he fixes his glasses and begins walking away. But I will be back. And I will kill you, because what you're doing is wrong, says Helsing as he walks out and rides his horse away from the Amor to his home, to where he can say goodbye to Claudia and his children, for he cannot allow them to be in danger until Dracula is eradicated. And so, with Claudia and his children in safety, Helsing is hunted for the next 4 years as Dracula sends men that he has turned to the side of genetic blessings after him, as Helsing has fought and fought day after day, week after week, month after month, and soon year after year, running from Dracula, and at the same time hunting Dracula, trying to find a way to defeat this man. He stands in front of the Queen. I am gonna need every single person, every single soldier that you have, my lord. I am going to need them. It is time. It is time to end Dracula's reign. It is time to end this insanity. The age of vampires must end today. And resumes Helsing. I cannot keep running. For 4 years, I have not got to see my children. For 4 years, I haven't got to see my love. And for 4 years, I have had to fight beings that would terrify any man. Please, with your blessing, I want to march to the Vamor with an army, says Helsing, as the queen accepts and grants the wishes of Helsing. As Helsing marches with an army to the Vamor, Dracula stands alone on the cobble road that leads to the Vamor, surrounded by the impaled bodies that have increased 10 times fold, and now you can't even see the grass upon the land as blood drips down every spear as bodies are hoisted 12 feet in the air. Helsing stands at the gates with an army behind him, seeing that Dracula has become weakened, with Dracula knowing that he has become weakened, for he cannot consume enough blood. He cannot consume enough people to contain the power of the god orb, for he has had it for nearly 6 years. For nearly 6 years he has obtained the god orb, longer than any man. But it is finally taking its toll and making him weak, making him tired, and constantly exhausted. Dracula stares down at the man that he once called friend as Helsing grabs his crossbow and fires it in the air. It signifies for the soldiers to charge. Over hundreds of armored men charging towards Dracula. Dracula places his palm on the ground, with spears flying out from the ground, impaling dozens of men, as many are able to dodge them, but few end up becoming the victims of Dracula the Impaler as the spears stab through their bodies, while Dracula uses every ounce of power that he has the strength to use from the god orb, summoning bats for distractions and forcing lightning down from the sky, forcing the earth itself to warp and engulf men. Dracula uses everything he has. As the soldiers get closer and closer to him, he's able to grant his body guardian-type genetic blessing abilities as he blocks the blades, the spears, and the arrows from piercing his skin. However, the soldiers begin to overwhelm Helsing's best friend, Helsing's old friend, Dracula. As Dracula becomes overwhelmed, he is finally stabbed by a blade from the back, as he is stabbed by a blade from the front, and finally his body becomes covered in blades, swords, spears, and arrows. As he is surrounded by soldiers, he stands up one last time as he releases a roar that would come from the likes of a lion. As so many soldiers step back in fear, Helsing walks up to Dracula. Old friend, it is time for you to finally meet your end, and your torture upon me will end. It will not, says Dracula, as Helsing signals for the soldiers to bind him in chains, and they drag him to the court of the Queen's castle, where they create a pile of lumber, sticks, and logs with a large post in the center, and chain Dracula to the post and ignite flames upon it. As Dracula begins to burn and becomes engulfed in the flames, he stares into the eyes of Helsing.
If you think you have won today, if you think that this is your victory, you are wrong. You have chosen the wrong side, and my death will not end your torment. I will use the last of my power. I will use the last of what the God Orb has granted me to curse you, Von Helsing. I curse you to roam this earth for all of eternity. I curse you to never be free of this prison, this life of yours. No blade, no arrow, no wound, not even time itself will free you from the prison that I have placed upon you. You are cursed to roam this land for all of eternity.
Screams Dracula as his body burns, and he becomes nothing more than ash, with Helsing speechless and emotionless, terrified of the words of Dracula, not knowing if it was a true curse and if he had truly been cursed, or if it was just the last words of Dracula's anger. However, he realizes after years and years that the curse was absolute, as he has been stabbed, slashed, and shot, fallen from great heights, and submerged underwater long enough to drown any man. He has never been able to die, and he watches his wife, Claudia, who is now of a very old age and breathing her last breath, and has aged over 40 years, and he has only aged maybe 2 or 3. And then even more years have passed as he watches his children pass away of old age, his grandchildren, and then his great-grandchildren, until he is the final man, the last one of his bloodline that he had created, watching everyone he had loved, everyone that he wants to love, pass away of old age far before him, and constantly having to fight genetic blessings, constantly trying to protect humanity from the threats that the genetic blessings bring, from the evil that comes from the genetic blessings. He fights and fights week after week, month after month, years after years, and even millennia after millennia. He fights as he watches war after war, culture after culture, civilization after civilization. He becomes tired, withered, and annoyed as he finally decides that the genetic blessings are far too much of a threat and have expanded far past his abilities to keep them from overrunning humanity. He creates an organization called the GBA and throws away the name Von Helsing and goes by nothing more than Chief. With Dracula, who had met his end by the hands of an old friend, waking up in a white and gold temple, confronted by an old lady who explains to him that he is the only man to ever hold the God Orb for as long as he did, and was the only man that was not killed by the God Orb, and has been granted the position of being the God Orb's guardian and becoming the guardian of all genetic blessings, giving him full control of the genetic blessings and the God Orb, giving him and him alone the power to decide who is worthy to accept the God Orb, and giving him and him alone the power to decide how many genetic blessings will be available on the world and what genetic blessings are sent down. And unlike the Guardian before him, Dracula sends down as many genetic blessings as he possibly can so that he can achieve the goal he had when he was still alive of eradicating humanity and making the entire world a world of genetic blessings, with him being the sole controller of what they do and being the king of the world, as he is handed a very specific genetic blessing, one he remembers, one he recognizes, as it is the genetic blessing that Van Helsing retrieved from Frankenstein's monster. And this genetic blessing was a very special genetic blessing. Instead of being absorbed by humans, it is absorbed by inanimate objects, and was the genetic blessing that was inside of Arthur's sword, the sword of Excalibur. And so Dracula decides who is allowed to use this genetic blessing, and eventually grants a man by the name of Edward Thatch, who goes by the name of Blackbeard, this genetic blessing. As his ship, the Queen Anne's Revenge, absorbs it, Blackbeard becomes the most notorious pirate in history, with the ship driving itself and sailing itself and firing the cannons by itself. And upon Blackbeard's death, he buries the genetic blessing in a chest hidden from the world as his hidden treasure. And Dracula spends all of eternity as the Guardian, watching people try to obtain the God Orb and fail, and watches the God Orb kill so many men. However, the God Orb is the least of his concerns until a man has approached the white and gold temple, a man who's gone on a massive journey to obtain it. And as the man walks up to him, Dracula begins to smile. "Old friend, you really are still alive. That curse really did work," says Dracula, with the chief glaring at him.
"You! How are you still alive? I watched you burn! You had cursed me! Do you have any idea what you had done to me?"
says the chief, with Dracula confused at the man's old age, at Helsing's old age. "How is it that you have aged? How is it that you've grown so old? I cursed you to roam for eternity."
"And I have, and I will. But that doesn't mean my body won't rot, you son of a bitch!"
"Very well. Why have you come here? Have you had a change of heart? Why do you wish to obtain the God Orb?"
"I wish to obtain it because I know it will kill me. It will finally free me, and before it does, I can use it to eradicate all genetic blessings and finally rid this world of that evil, and finally rid humanity of the threat that lingers within them,"
says the chief, with Dracula standing up. No, I do not allow you permission to obtain the God Orb. I and I alone decide who is worthy, and you are not worthy, Helsing. You are not allowed to obtain the God Orb.
Very well. That doesn't surprise me. May I ask you something?
Go for it.
Why have you not gotten involved? Why have you not stopped me from killing countless genetic blessings if you are the guardian?
I do not get involved. I do not deem it worthy nor necessary to get involved. Since you've traveled here, I will give you one gift. I will grant you a genetic blessing. A mentalist type, an incredibly powerful genetic blessing that might help you achieve your goal. I don't think that you will ever eradicate all genetic blessings, but do you accept this gift of mine? Says Dracula, with the chief thinking and then nodding his head.
Give me whatever! Give me anything I can use to finally rid this world of your evil.
Very well, says Dracula, as he casts a genetic blessing upon the chief. With the chief receiving this mentalist type genetic blessing, he is cast out of the white and gold temple as he wakes up in his bed in the GBA.
Very well, and I have now a genetic blessing. But if it grants me the power to finally eradicate them, I am okay with constantly watching those who I love die. But I only hope it's enough,
says the chief as he pours himself a glass of whiskey and walks into the training grounds of the GBA as he sees his very young new recruits, a young Jasmine, a young Vince who had just become engaged, with Paul, Jim, and Jake all standing there waiting for his orders.
Well, what are you guys moping around? Why are you guys moping around? We have work to do. We have genetic blessings to kill. So, let's get busy.
And that is Genetic Blessings Part 2, Chapter 5. And I will be concluding Part 2 in Genetic Blessings, Chapter 6. And then we get to move on to the conclusion, Part 3. If you guys have listened for this long, thank you very, very much. If these videos are getting too long for you, absolutely let me know in the comments. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you guys did really enjoy, please do consider hitting the like and subscribe button, and do not get by a meteor. Take care of yourselves, and bye.